In 211 BC, a Roman denarius contained 4.5 grams of pure silver. By 270 AD, that same coin, same name, same empire, contained 5% silver and 95% copper. In 1792, the US dollar was defined as 24.1 grams of pure silver. In 1971, it became backed by nothing but a promise. Same pattern, same justifications, 2,000 years apart. This is Money Origins, where we trace the patterns that currencies follow, from ancient Rome to your wallet today. What you're about to see isn't a history lesson, it's a timeline. Two currencies, separated by 2 millennia, walking the exact same path, step by step, crisis by crisis, excuse by excuse. We'll look at how both started pure, how both got diluted slowly at first, how wars accelerated the process, and how both reached a point where turning back became impossible. By the end, you'll understand why the question isn't whether history repeats, it's which mile marker we're standing at right now. Quick note before we go further. Nothing here is financial advice. I'm walking through historical patterns, not telling you what to do with your money. Make your own decisions. The denarius didn't start its life as a scam. When Rome introduced it during the Second Punic War, it was valuable because it was value. 4.5 grams of silver you could hold, melt down, or trade anywhere. For the first century and a half, Rome barely touched it. Currency debasement wasn't necessary yet. The empire was expanding, loot was flowing in, and the treasury stayed full. The dollar didn't start as a scam either. The Coinage Act of 1792 defined it precisely: 371.25 grains of pure silver, or 24.75 grains of gold. It wasn't a promise to pay you silver, it was silver. You could take a dollar coin to any mint and have it melted without losing value. For over a century, the metal content stayed stable. Both currencies earned trust by being predictable. That trust is what made the first compromise possible. Rome's first major debasement came under Nero, around 64 AD. He reduced the silver content from 95% to 90%. The excuse was the Great Fire of Rome and the cost of rebuilding. It was framed as temporary, a necessity. 5% less silver didn't collapse the economy, so the precedent stuck. By the time of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, the denarius was down to 75% silver. The justification? The Marcomannic Wars. Emergencies kept happening, and each one required just a bit more debasement. The dollar's creep started slower, but followed the same logic. During the Civil War, the US issued unbacked paper greenbacks to fund the war effort. Temporary measure. After the war, the country returned to a gold-backed system, but the idea had been planted. You could print money when you needed it. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. By 1933, FDR banned private gold ownership and devalued the dollar by raising the gold price from $20 an ounce to $35. The excuse? The Great Depression, another emergency. The formula was identical: crisis, debasement, reassurance, repeat. Once a currency crosses a certain threshold, the pace of debasement stops creeping and starts sprinting. For Rome, that threshold came during the crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome had over 50 emperors. Most died violently. Each new regime needed to pay the army, and the fastest way to do that was to mint more coins with less silver. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, around 260 AD, the denarius was down to just 5% silver. A copper coin with a thin silver wash that rubbed off in your hand. Soldiers knew. Merchants knew. No one wanted to hold the currency, so prices exploded. A measure of wheat that cost half a denarius in the 2nd century cost over 200 denarii by the late 3rd. The purchasing power loss wasn't gradual anymore. It was a collapse in slow motion. The dollar hit its acceleration point in the 20th century. World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. Each crisis pushed the currency further from its metal backing. But the real break came in 1971. Nixon closed the gold window. Foreign governments could no longer redeem dollars for gold. The dollar became purely fiat, backed by nothing except confidence in the US government. Since then, the money supply has exploded. The dollar has lost roughly 97% of its purchasing power since 1913. A product that cost $1 in 1913 costs about $30 today. Rome took 5 centuries to debase the denarius from 100% silver to 5%. The dollar went from gold-backed to fiat in less than 2 centuries, and most of the purchasing power loss happened in the last 50 years. There's a moment in every currency's debasement where reverting becomes politically impossible. For Rome, that moment came when the army's loyalty depended on debased coins. Soldiers weren't paid in silver anymore. They were paid in copper coins that the state pretended were silver. Attempting to restore the old standard would have meant admitting the coins were worthless, which would have triggered mutiny. So Rome kept printing. For the dollar, the point of no return was probably 1971, but you could argue it was earlier, maybe 1933, when gold was confiscated, or 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created. Regardless of the exact date, we're far past it now. The US national debt is over $30 trillion. Reverting to a gold-backed currency would require either admitting the currency is worth a fraction of what we pretend, or acquiring an impossible amount of gold. Neither is going to happen. Both systems locked themselves into a path where the only option was to keep debasing. Rome's currency collapse didn't happen in a vacuum. The denarius was the reserve currency of the ancient Mediterranean. When it failed, trade networks fractured. Regions reverted to barter or started minting their own local currencies. The collapse of the denarius didn't cause the fall of Rome, but it made the empire economically incoherent. By the time Diocletian tried to stabilize things in the late 3rd century, the damage was done. The dollar is the reserve currency of the modern world. Most international trade is settled in dollars. Most central banks hold dollars as reserves. When confidence in the denarius collapsed, the Roman Empire lost its economic coherence. If confidence in the dollar collapses, we're not talking about one country's problem. Rome had no backup plan. Neither do we. So here's where we are. The denarius went from 100% silver to 5% over 5 centuries. The empire survived the debasement longer than most people expect, but it didn't survive the consequences. The dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power in just over a century, most of it in the last 50 years. The pattern isn't just similar, it's identical. Gradual debasement, war-driven acceleration, a point of no return, and a slow unraveling of purchasing power. The question isn't whether history is repeating. It's whether we're in the slow creep, the acceleration, or somewhere past the point of no return. I don't know the answer, but I know Rome didn't see the end coming until it was too late to stop it. If you want to understand why central banks are still hoarding 35,000 tons of gold while telling you it's a relic, that's the next video. Worth saying again, none of this is advice, just history and the patterns it leaves behind.